Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Saturday afternoon, I think, for most of you. Saturday morning for some, maybe Saturday evening, depending on where you're watching. Thanks for tuning in on a weekend. We don't do these too often, but when we do, it's usually for a good reason. And today, it's a very great reason. I've got Kevin Nowlan, who's going to be talking with me about his career and anything we really want to chat about. We'll be doing an art sale, and we've got a very special OAX related announcement that we'll do kind of in between the interview before we get started with the sale. And I'll give you all the particulars related to the sale when we get to that segment. It will be a claim sale in the chat like we usually do, but I'll run through the rules of engagement for today's claim sale as well. But if you've been to one of these before, you know how it goes. So without further ado, let me bring in the man of the afternoon, Mr. Kevin Nowlan. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Bill. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. How about yourself?
Pretty good. We'll see.
we were definitely comparing backgrounds and backdrops earlier, so I still think you've got the better one than I do.
No, I grabbed some old convention banners, just like I said, to cover up some conspicuous clutter. So you've got your collection spread out behind you. I'm very impressed by that. Yeah.
I do. So is that a work of art to your right? Is that something you're working on? I can't. I should make you.
This is a Superman thing. Yeah, that's a cover I'm working on, a variant cover for this project I'm inking over Brian Hitch. It's a Superman Black Label book series, three issue series.
Now you said you're inking over Brian on that one.
Yes.
And so is this more of kind of a warm up for you to?
Well, that's a variant cover. He did the main cover, and I don't know if there might be other variants, but for the first issue, they asked me to do a variant.
Oh, great! So all your pencils and inks on it. Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Colors, pencils, inks, yeah,
and colors too. Well, that's we're going to talk about how versatile you are as a comics creator, I think today. But well, that's cool. You seem to get involved with a lot of the landmark issues of late, right? I mean, Action Comics 1000, and you got to work on the 1000th issue of Detective Comics with Dan Jurgens as well. Right. I mean, what's that like when when you're working on something that has historical significance to us all?
It's funny. I rarely even think about that. I mean, I might consider it later, but when you're doing the work, you just, you try to do the best you can on that particular page and try not to, because you could really spook yourself if you start overthinking it. But yeah, I guess the exception might be if it's a cover and I know that it's going to be an issue that will get a lot of attention. I might put a little extra time onto it as opposed to something that just has to be, knocked out for a deadline on a Friday or something. But
right.
Yeah, I really think until later. It's funny, you don't really see what has been significant in your past until later. So.
Well, you've got 40 years in comics, so I mean, I guess if you had to look at your career, what would you say are some of the more pivotal works that you got to collaborate on or just contribute to over that time?
Well, I usually mention the Jack B. Quick series, even though those were just short stories, because they were written by Alan Moore and because they were such great little stories. And again, because the editor, Scott Dumier, let me do my own pencils, inks, hand lettering, and everything. And we were essentially creating a brand new character. And it, none of those books sold terribly well, so the line of comics ended. But I'm still very proud of those for the terrific stories, probably some of my better artwork in continuity as well. But the Batman Black and White story that I did for the first run of those books, I'm very proud of that. Superman Aliens, speaking of Dan Jurgens, Superman Aliens was kind of an odd thing. It was in many ways it was a strange combination of styles because Dan and I don't draw anything our approaches are very, very different. So it could have been a real tug of war, but Dan's a great guy and is very open to. He did layouts instead of pencils, but they're everything's pretty much resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of shadows and things like that, but everything else is worked out beautifully. So it's a pretty smooth process, and that I'm pretty proud of that. But I don't know. I could go on for quite a while. Oh, Doctor Strange. This is another inking job, but Doctor Strange Fate, one of the amalgam books I did, where I inked over Garcia Lopez, because I'm an enormous fan of his work. And that I thought those pages just turned out beautifully. We had a beautiful colorist finishing them off, and just one of those jobs where everything came together so nicely.
And you won an Eisner with the work with Alan Moore, if I'm not mistaken, or won something.
Yes,
there was
something I think we won. I can never remember for sure. I have to go. I got them hanging on the wall. I could go in and look. I think we won. I think I won one, and I think the series, the Tomorrow Stories series, won one as well. So yeah, it was one of those projects where people liked it. It just didn't sell well enough. So
right. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I loved that whole line of books. I felt that
great.
They were so unique, and you could tell Alan was really concerned about the production quality. Everything about those books just were really they were special. They kind of harkened back to like my early days of reading in the comics in the mid 70s, with things that really turned me on to comics. And yeah, I mean, it is it's just one of those things I missed when it ended. I mean, I really do. But
yeah.
That's pretty cool though. And I think that who was I seeing? Steve Lipsky just mentioned that Jose says you're still one of his favorite inkers or finishers, and deservedly so.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's one of my favorite artists easily. He's a true artist where he's not necessarily a fan favorite, but boy, you talk to any artist who's ever drawn a comic book and they just are amazed by the work that he does. He does it with such skill, and has done it with such skill for such a long time, and kept the quality up so high. It's amazing.
No, that's very true. I mean, we always we feature a lot of artwork by him on the channel when we're talking about pieces that are added to comic art fans that we really enjoy. I mean, it's hard to ignore pretty much anything that he puts out there, whether it's a convention sketch or a published piece. It's always something memorable. He has a great sense of panel layout and composition. He's brilliant. And that's he was one of the people who I was I made a list of people you had worked with, and he was one of those guys that I thought would be interesting to talk about. I mean, when was your how you've worked with him on many projects? I mean, when you approach something with him, I mean, do you approach different artists differently when you're actually doing the finishing work?
Yes, if I'm doing inks or finishes, it basically starts with them. His pencils, I don't think I've ever worked on anything but just finished pencils with Jose. They're just rich with detail, especially background detail and props. He researches all that stuff, and everything is so beautifully composed, so well drawn. But what's wonderful is a lot of times he'll ink his own pencils. So there's a few there's certain things you leave for the inking, whether it's going to be you or someone else doing the inks. And so I won't say that his pencils are rough, but he's not one of those. There's a lot of modern guys who draw and they finish it in pencil. I mean, they pencil, the taper on a line, etc. is right there in the pencils. So you barely even need to ink that stuff. You can scan it and clean it up. But Jose's more old school, where it's like, okay, I got enough of this here. Let's move on to something else. And there's room to contribute. like on a figure, you'll have a certain lighting. He's not going to draw every little feathered, tapered bit of that shadow. He'll put the shadow in and then leave it for interpretation. So, yeah, the only problem I've had ever working with him is deadlines, because he puts so much on the page. It takes so long to ink those that it's occasionally a problem with the deadlines. But it's worth it. The stuff just looks just so beautiful.
Now, when you start a inking project, like you mentioned with Jurgens, he'll sometimes give you just very loose layouts. I mean, going into it, do you know kind of what to expect from the penciler when you're doing either the inking or the finishing work? Do they kind of give you the scoop on what to expect, so you can kind of plan your schedule to meet the deadlines?
Yes, and I'll correct you a little bit, because Dan doesn't really give loose pencils. Their layouts, it's a little hard to describe. You may have seen some before.
I have.
Everything's there, including the rendering and details. But that final step in penciling something, where you go in and sort of model the shapes with shadows and lighting and things like that, he usually doesn't include that. But they're never sketchy. They're always like, here's the line. That's they're very crisp and clear. I would never describe them as loose.
Okay.
But a lot of times I'll start a job working over Dan's layouts and think, okay, this time I'm not going to mess with it much. I'm just going to finish what he's done and try as hard as I can to do it in an approximation of his style, or at least as close as I can. And by the time I'm done, I'm like, oh my goodness, I take off and start, because that's kind of, here's the problem. I never planned on being an inker. I just wanted to draw comics. So I worked on drawing. So I'm still doing that when I'm working on someone else's work. I'll get so far and go, oh, this needs a huge shadow over on this side. I need to, I wasn't thinking of it earlier, but now I see this is what we need right here. And fortunately, virtually everyone I've worked with in that regard has been fine with it. But I always feel like I owe them an apology every time I turn in pages. Like, sorry, kind of got carried away here. But that's just so often what happens.
Well, I mean, I think you've been around the business for 40 years, and probably in part because your versatility. You're great at penciling, inking yourself, inking others. You've done lettering, coloring. I mean, and that's something that I think I don't see a lot of creators, specializing in so many things today. But I think I think of guys like Bob McLeod, who had long careers, right? I mean, he was a very good penciler, but he was also a great inker and versatile enough to work with a lot of different pencilers as well. And I think that's that's part of it, right? You need to be good at everything. But that's interesting that you still feel, when you're finishing work or inking, that that you're still, there's a part of you that's, the artist wants to make sure that you get everything right. I mean, and here's a good question that I'd be curious to know. I mean, when you're because we look at least when I look at a panel, an interior page, I really picture it as one, whole unit, as a work of art. When I look at it, I love that. And as sequential storytelling, I would assume that when you're working through the inking, I mean, do you go back and kind of just look at it in its entirety and its flow, or or do you just really go panel to panel and not really think about that overall presentation of the piece?
Oh, I definitely go back and look at it a second time or third time, or sometimes a fourth or fifth time, time permitting. But yeah, now are you talking about a page with, let's say, 5 panels? Are you asking if I try to evaluate that as a whole instead
Right,
of
it's
just
part of it. I mean, because for me, a lot of times when I'm choosing which artworks I want to purchase for my collection, or that I might want to pick to talk about on that weekly talk show I mentioned to you in the green room, I'm looking at the work as a whole versus, and sometimes you look at a piece of art because of the importance of the story, those sorts of things. But a lot of times I'm really looking at the overall layout, flow and my overall impression of the entire page versus like singling out a panel saying, I love this art because that one panel is just so great. I tend to look at it the entire page.
I do up to a point, but I feel like I have to resist the temptation. I won't mention any names, but there was a movement years ago that seemed to grow out of the increasing value of originals in the art market, where instead of focusing on continuity and really drawing pictures that move this, that move the story along and would draw you in to the story, certain artists would focus on turning out a piece of art that would be very profitable in the secondary market. And so I've had writers show me scripts or plots and go, and now here's what I wrote. Now take a look at what this guy drew. And it would be this big pinup instead of a series of panels telling the story. And they got away with, that, like I said, that seemed to be a movement. It's probably gone.
No, it was. It certainly was. And I think when people started realizing the value of the art market, and that could have been 10, 15 years ago, when people started seeing that there was value in that, yeah, you'd see a book have a few more extra splashes in it, or a DPS that, maybe you weren't expecting it, but I know where you're coming from. I mean, like I showed you that Uncanny X-Men page. I love that page. It's got like 10 panels on it, right? Yeah. And I love it for its storytelling, and I love it as a work of art. And maybe he could have just drawn Colossus lifting, the plane out of the water as a big splash, but it didn't need it. There were so many more important things to do on the page, and those are the things I think that draw us to comics in the first place. The story, and so splashes should be an afterthought versus something that you kind of put in front of things. And I think that's always why you always hear people talking about the disappointment in like a cover when it doesn't really have anything to do with the story, and you wonder, is it really there just to catch your eye? That might not be about sales, but it is about something that has some eye appeal on a rack at a comic store. But yeah, for me, when I'm looking at stuff, I'm always just looking at and thinking of it as an overall work of art, and just that to me, at least as a collector, is what's most important to me.
Well, and what I love in comics and in drawing a story is, growing up, there were certain artists and certain stories where I couldn't flip through them. If I picked it up, it's like going through channels and your favorite movie comes on, and you're in the middle of the movie, you just have to watch the whole thing because it's like The Godfather. There's never a dull. It's a whole series of great scenes. Like, oh, that great scene's coming up. Well, I love comics that do that, where you go to the store, you open it up just to take a glance at the artwork inside, and before you know it, you're reading the story. You can't resist the urge to read the story, and that's exactly what I want my drawings to do in the story, is to pull the reader in, because there have been plenty of examples in my experience where I try so hard, like I see a comic, looks great, and I sit down and try to read it, and for whatever reason, it's just not connecting, and I can't, pick it up, maybe half a dozen times and start to read it, and it doesn't hold my attention. It doesn't pull me in. So I know that's kind of voodoo stuff or whatever, but it just that's the thing. That's usually my goal when I'm drawing the story. It's not necessarily to have a spectacular, dazzling moment with a big splash and all that, but to just pull the reader in so they actually read the story from beginning to end. That's always my goal.
Well, that's good. But that's what comics are all about. That's what sequential storytelling is all about. You want that, and that's why we love the books in the first place. But it was just from an artist perspective. I was curious about, do you ever hold up that piece of art and be like, I did a good job on this, and you just look at it. Does that happen? I'll humbly refer again to Garcia Lopez, because that's the wonderful thing about inking his pencils is, you get so involved in putting ink on the page, and then you erase the pencils and you pull back and look at it and you go,
that's just, but you take, probably take a disproportionate amount of the praise, patting myself on the back and go, yeah, but it's because Jose penciled it, Uh, anyone could have inked that and it still would have been beautiful. So, um, but yeah. And again, a lot of times with my own stuff where I've done something all by myself, a lot of times, you know, I'll look at it years later, and that's when you can really evaluate something with
Mhm.
not just fresh eyes, but you've forgotten about this thing. Someone brings it up to you at a convention to sign it, and you go, "Oh, that turned out all right." It's almost like looking at someone else's work
Mhm.
that you haven't seen because it's been so long.
So it's flattering to have somebody bring a piece up from 20, 30 years ago to have you take a look
Sometimes,
at
and
it and sign it.
sometimes it's all you could do to resist the temptation to, when you see something that just did not go well, whether it was a deadline or you tried something different that didn't work or whatever. I, I've got friends who coach me on, it's not proper to tell this person who bought this book and wants your signature on it. It's not proper to say, um, I did a horrible job on that, even
No,
though
not when
that's
somebody's
my
got their
first reaction. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean that collector bought it for a reason, one way or another. Yeah,
yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
Yeah, I had Bob sign um, a page of art that he inked over John Romita Jr. in the early '80s when I just saw him at MegaCon a few months ago. And he's like, yeah, that came out pretty good. I still think, yeah, I think I did a good job on that one. And so that was good to hear him
Yeah.
say that. I mean, as long as he wasn't lying, but
Yeah.
because you never
Yeah.
know, right? I mean, I think I once saw someone show Mike Mignola like a piece of art that somebody else inked, and and I think he kind of furrowed his brow, like, oh, he was trying to do too much with my pencils, kind of a thing. And and it
Mhm.
was a video, see, it was on a YouTube interview, and so you kind of like, like, you knew the collector liked the piece. He didn't say it was terrible, but you could see he wasn't really happy, even though he said very, complimentary things of the inker. He said something along the lines of, yeah, like he was trying too hard. I wish he would have just done
Mhm.
what I would have thought would have
Yeah.
come natural to that.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was looking at some early Mignola stuff over the weekend, and it's interesting how, well, for one thing, his style was evolving, but when other people were inking his early pencils, they seemed so to be working so hard at taking all the quirks out of it, all the unusual things that to me are, what makes Mignola's work so charming.
Hmm.
They were like blanderizing virtually everything, and it was a losing battle because eventually Mike's inking his own pencils and his style's getting stronger and stronger. But it's just so funny to see all that stuff misinterpreted so badly early on.
Right, right, and that is true. I mean, he had a really interesting period where uh, it was more loose. I don't know. I think of like some of his Rocket Raccoon pages. I have one of
Yeah.
those, and some of his early Marvel work too, where everything kind of transitioned with Hellboy, or even a little bit before Hellboy too. He did
Mm-hmm.
those series of X-Men covers. I can't remember, X-Force, something like that, and you could start seeing that his style change there. But I think the piece that I can't even remember what it was from. It was a DC page with Hawkman on it. That's all I remember. So if you're the collector out there, I apologize for reminding you of that. But what are you going to do, right? When you've been in comics for as long as you have, you've run into deadlines and probably had a few rushed jobs out there. But by and large, I mean, I'm just following the comments. So, I saw Rich Cirillo just mentioned that he discovered your pencils and inks on the Outsiders annual years ago, and he's been a fan of your work ever since. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Thanks,
yeah.
Rich.
And is are books like that where you get to pencil and ink? I mean, how do you? I assume, well, obviously you approach them differently because you really handed the script and you get to do your own thing. But when you work on like an annual, especially, so you're kind of coming into something like that. I mean, how do you approach a brand new story that's kind of self-contained in something like that, where you get to kind of have a lot of freedom in terms of the look and feel of a book?
Oh, I approach it with a lot of enthusiasm because that's generally those are the jobs that turn out the best. Where the Outsiders Annual was, it had a deadline, but I think the deadline was many months down the road. So they let me pencil, ink, and do color guides. Although they made me, it's too bad that I remember this, but they made me audition to do the color guides because I didn't have a lot of coloring under my belt. But then they talked like they were very happy once the guides started coming in. But it was there's a lot of things that were nice about that. One was Mike Barr, who wrote a plot. We worked Marvel style, so he gave me a lot of freedom, especially all through the book, to break things down the way and pace things the way I wanted to.
Did you ask to do the coloring on it, or was that something that they?
I did. They were going to give it to someone else, and I didn't just ask. I practically begged them to. Like I said, they were reluctant, and I think it was the production department where the problem was. That the editorial was fine with me doing the coloring, but the production people were in charge of coloring assignments, and their reaction was, "Well, we don't know this guy. We've never done any coloring that we've seen." So I sent in some stuff and what amounted to an audition, and they begrudgingly allowed me to do the guides. And then it got a lot of I felt vindicated when the coloring itself got a lot of attention. People were very happy with the coloring. Although I think they had to pay the separators a little extra money because what I had done took a little more time than the book was printed offset when that was a rare thing in comics. It wasn't coated stock, but it was printed offset, and the originals were a little bit larger than standard comics size boards. So there were a lot of things that worked out well on that.
I hate to say I didn't read it, but now I've written it down. I'm very interested to see. I mean, that's cool. It was a Marvel style book. That you got to have so much creative freedom over, and had a lobby for full. I mean, did you letter it too? I mean, I guess
I wanted to letter it, of course, because it's always, I always try. They didn't, and that may have been the deadline. But by the time I'd finished the pencils, it was close enough to the drop dead date that they said they talked me into just giving up the letter. But it was Todd Klein lettering it, so the lettering was beautiful. Regardless, but and it's you said Marvel style. It's it was written Marvel style, but it's a DC book.
Yes. Well, that was the interesting thing too. I mean, I was going to mention that, and then I thought, but no, that's that. Well, again, I've got it on my notes here to check out after our interview. I was seeing some other comments over. I saw Mike Fosberg popped in here, and now I don't see where his comment was. But where was Mike?
Yeah.
There he was. He said, Kevin, good luck with your sale today. You're in good hands with me. You're always your work always inspires me. And then he said, my lap board is the backing from a package you sent me years ago. Use it at figure drawing on Sundays at Bill Stout's studio.
Oh, wow. Oh, how cool.
and I let Kevin know too that his package was the best, well-packed art package that I've gotten from any artist. So, I mean, it was the artwork was in Masonite, both sides. And then it was at least 2 layers or more of cardboard around that with some bubble wrap as well, I think. So there was no chance. I mean, I can't say no chance, but when I picked it up, I thought I thought maybe you sent me an artist edition from IDW in there.
I should have. That'll be coming next. So.
Well, that's actually a good thing. Yeah, the artist edition. I mean, that we had you on the channel in the fall when Scott did that interview with you. I mean, that was I got to take a look at the book. I mean, I think a lot of fans of your work were very happy with the book, and a lot of your contemporaries or peer. I saw Kayfabe did a really great review of the book. I think. I can't remember the other artist who did a YouTube video of the book. Just your coworkers or peers also were thrilled to be able to have something like that in their hands. I mean, that was yeah, I thought that was a fantastic retrospective of your work. I mean, it had the complete story, the Man Thing complete story that you did with Gerber in it, and just so many great covers and interior pages too. I mean, what was it like getting asked by Scott to to do something like that?
It was terrific. As these things normally evolve, initially it was just like, maybe we can do this. We'll see if it'll work out. We'll try. No promises. And then as it started to become a reality, I of course got very, very excited. And obviously Scott and I have known each other a long time, and it was just fun putting it together. And he was finding old stuff. If you look through the book, most of the newer things come from me. Like
Hmm.
there's a 10-page Hulk story that's just from like last year or 2 years ago. Um, but it was nice because I still have the artwork and I had nice scans of the pencils as well. So we were able to put them side by side, which made it fun.
Hmm.
Um, but Scott paid me the ultimate compliment for any aging artist, because he surprised me as we were putting it together. He suggested a piece that was fairly new, and I said, "Oh, really? I thought you just wanted old stuff." And he said, "Well, with some artists, yes, but Kevin, you're still good." And I thought, wow, Scott, that's like the nicest thing you've ever said to me. So whether I am or not, it's a nice range from really, I mean, stuff that is literally 40 years old, all the way up to some fairly recent stuff. So it covers quite a bit of ground.
Well, Scott does not lie. He's a very honest person, and that was probably, that was from the heart. Truthful. He wouldn't.
Yeah,
That's funny. But no,
yeah,
Scott's a good friend, and I'm definitely happy that he's helped us with those virtual shows. But yeah, he's got a very good eye. He's not gonna blow smoke towards you about
well,
why
good.
you want certain things in there, but that's
Yeah,
that's great. But it was fantastic, and I'm so happy that IDW puts those books out. I mean, I think that's been one of the best things for our hobby, and I think for all comic fans to be able to have the opportunity to see their originals, even if they don't become collectors. Just getting to know that this process is out there. I mean, most of us
yeah,
as art collectors, were comic collectors first and didn't know you could own the artwork. And
right.
I mean, that's how it was for me. I had a few extra dollars in my pocket after I completed a run of books at Wizard World, and I stumbled onto an art dealer's table, and the rest is history. So,
Yeah, you're
that's
hooked.
usually how it happens.
Yeah, yeah. The artist editions are great, just like you said, because instead of owning that one, that one piece of artwork can only be owned by one person at a time. But now thousands of people can have the next best thing, a large, high resolution scan of the artwork, and also just as an archive, because who knows that that X-Men cover might be destroyed in a fire next week, and
Right.
this will be all you'll have of it to document that. So um,
No, that's true.
we were talking about how the the market for original artwork has grown so much, um, but it's fun to see how many secondary like little cottage industries have grown out of it, like the artist editions. I saw some guys in Europe doing the equivalent of that with some European books that are scanned from the pencils, large format, hardcover,
Hmm.
and they're just beautiful. It's sort of a recognition of the process for hand drawn comics, that these are the steps along the way. Seems like most artists really enjoy seeing that from other artists. Um, the process shots where you can go, okay, you started with a layout and then you made this odd choice here and you flipped it, or you made some other change, and I'm always interested in seeing that kind of work from other artists.
Hmm. Yeah, there was that Brian Bolland edition. I forget, it had a funny name, but it was got it somewhere around here, but it's a phenomenal book. It wasn't IDW published; it was done out of Europe, and it was cool to see. I mean, and there was a Carol Day book that was recently put together for strips. That's just phenomenal. You get to see the originals in a really large format, and we need more publishers being interested in showing the originals, and kind of getting those stories out there, because it's needed, it's necessary.
Right.
So we've gotten some questions from the chat. I'll just hit a couple of them that I can answer. Someone wanted to know when we were going to be doing the art sale. We'll probably start that in about 25 minutes. I figured an hour into the show we'll do that, because we'll be able to talk about the pieces and answer some questions there. And there was a question about OAX. We will talk about OAX right before the art sale too, so I can remove that as a highlight. And so other questions. There was one from Jason. He wanted to know, he sees a lot of your inks on Quesada nowadays, and how did the two of you come to collaborate so frequently? At least over the last few years, and even before that.
Boy, I'm not even sure what the first thing was that we did together, but I was inking him on some Marvel covers. I can't even think how many years ago. And then he or Denny O'Neil asked me to ink his pencils on the Sword of Osrail miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he went into management and didn't do a whole lot of artwork for a couple of decades. But he's back to freelancing again now, and so he just asked me to ink a few covers, and they're always fun to do. He did a Batman wraparound that had like 35 different variations of Batman on it, and it nearly killed me trying to ink that thing. So I'm sure it was murder for him to pencil, because he did everything, very, very tight pencils. Again, you could just scan the pencils. I was not really needed on that job, but other than that one, they've all been a pleasure to work on. That one was a real chore. So.
Well, I know you've known him for a while. Jimmy Palmiotti has been adding a lot of artwork to CAF of late, and he had added a drawing, like a portrait of him that you had done that had Quesada in it and a few other artists, and it got a lot of views. Yeah, Scott, that's right. Yeah. The young Scott Doonbeer was in that.
Very young Scott Doonbeer, yeah. It was a birthday card, and I think Jimmy's birthday was coming up, and he asked me to do this. It had to have been 25 years ago or more. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, Jimmy's been rating all of his old portfolios and flat files, and just pulling out some incredible pieces from his collection that he's probably owned for longer than 25 years. But I saw that one the other day. I had a laugh, and I know that Jimmy's booth assistant Patrick is in here, and he says, "Why does Jimmy Palmiotti love you so much?"
I don't know. I know why I love Jimmy so much. He's a great guy. He works so hard to make money for all of his friends, and I don't know if he ever does much for himself, but he's the best friend you could ever ask for, because he really does. He's always thinking of other people. He's a great guy. So.
Well, I agree with you there. Yeah, he's I moved down to Florida about 6 months ago, but when we started talking about doing the show down here and everything, Jimmy was the first person I got advice from, just because he's local and he had a good feel for things. Yeah, he's very generous with his time when he believes in it, and he believes in you, right? I think that's the thing. So he is fantastic. A couple other questions here. Somebody wanted to know, Rich Danny's asked, whatever happened to the art of the Goon variant cover? I'd love to get my mitts on that one. You're familiar with what, or reminded of what that is from that?
Oh, I think I still have that. Yeah, and that's I'm going to name drop here. If we're talking about the same piece, that's the one when I posted on Twitter. Ed Asner, of all people, had a charming little remark. because he was, for a while Ed was trying to raise money for his charity, and a lot of
Yes.
they got a lot of comic artists involved, and every year we try to round everybody up and make some donations for a very good cause. And to his credit, the Ed Asner, this is back when blue checks on Twitter actually meant something. The Ed Asner was really involved with this stuff, and would often post encouraging notes to comic artists, especially those who had contributed, etc. Anyway, so yeah, that's because of that sentimental attachment. I think I would have a hard time parting with that original. So if we're talking about that one with the Goon and it seemed like a bunch of strange looking kind of monster guys in the background. It's just an oddball cover.
Yeah, so
that's one that
you mentioned the rights and creatures on it. So maybe that's the one. Okay. Okay, we're all on the same page.
Yep.
But that's true. I mean, didn't I think Heritage did like an annual Ed Asner art auction for charity as well?
Right. And that's continued after his passing because the charity still exists, and it's a very good cause. It's for
I know I'm forgetting it too. I'm gonna have to Google it while we're talking.
Yeah, it's to help families who have members with that are on the autism spectrum. And my wife is a special ed preschool teacher and works with a lot of kids who have autism. But the Ed Asner Family Center, there in I'm not sure exactly where, but it's somewhere in the LA area. That's what they do, and that's what the charity is for. It's a terrific it's a terrific project that they put together there.
Well, there you go. So Rich Danny's, you're not getting your mitts on that one.
No,
no matter how much
sorry. Not anytime soon. Yeah.
I don't blame you. We talked about that, Kevin, how there's a lot of your work. I mean, you love your work. I mean, and I think as you rightfully should. And so that, there's a lot of pieces that you have no interest in letting go. And I think that's wonderful. I think more artists should approach their work like that. You let a few things go here or there, but if there's got to be, those special pieces in your collection, like that, you always remember that Ed Asner actually, sent you a message through Twitter about it. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, I think as collectors too, I mean, those pieces that have a sentimental story or something, of importance, the interaction you had with an artist or even another collector when you were picking up a piece, it definitely, leaves something on that piece that just makes it harder to ever want to let it go. It's gifts from other people, those sorts of things. I mean, I have a lot of art. When, like I mentioned, when I picked up that Cochran page, I went through 2 portfolios trying to figure out what pieces I could sell, and I couldn't find a single piece. And I was like, I don't want to sell.
It gets harder. Yeah, it gets harder to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's
can I just put in one more thing? Because you reminded me of something. When you were talking earlier about you could get another Kirby Thor page. Right. Well, that was why I used to sell literally everything. As soon as the ink was dry, I'd sell it. Just like the Jack B. Quick stories took too long to draw, so I'd need to sell the originals just to pay the rent. Well, and friends would be saying, you got to stop that. Hang on to some of this stuff. And I finally did, and I finally realized you put it in a nice portfolio and you put it away, and then you come back later and look at it, and that's the evaluation that really counts. If it's a year later and you look at it and you go, oh, I like that, then it really does get harder to sell this stuff, which is why I'm hanging on to so much more stuff these days. I still occasionally sell something, but not anything like I used to. So.
No, well, I commend you for that. I think that's the way I'd wish more artists would be. I mean, we as collectors, we want more of your art out there, but you got to be smart. I mean, we all don't have retirement plans when we're self-employed and those sorts of things. And I've been self-employed for over 20 years. So I can tell you, I don't have much of a retirement savings, so I get it. And I think that no, you're doing the right thing. So, here was a question from Spinner Rack Rick. He said it was when we were talking about Mike. He said, any Mignola verse projects in the near future?
Oh, I don't think so. I would love to, because I'm a big fan. But yeah, I'm kind of out of that. I don't know what you'd even call it. I'm out of that circle now, I guess. And as I referred to Mike's pencils earlier, I I think it's amazing that there was a time when he would let other people ink his pencils, because that's crazy. No one can ink his pencils. I mean, Craig Russell did a beautiful job, and other people, but it, that's he has such a personal style. He's the only one who should be inking his pencils. Um, but yeah, I did three, and it was wonderful. I did three um, stories, three comics for them. I did a Lobster Johnson. I did a Hellboy story. And I did an Abe Sapien, which had so much of Hellboy in it. I still think of it as a Hellboy story. Um, and the Hellboy story, Mike actually wrote. I think he took pity on me, because he at that time he saw that I was inking some stuff that he maybe wasn't that impressed by. And we were sitting around after a convention, and he starts pitching me this story, and it's just full of the weird. Well, if you read the introduction that Mike wrote for the artist edition, clearly what Mike likes about my work is what I like about his work, is the weird stuff. So he was he came up with this story with ghost cows and flying pigs and grain elevators and stuff like that. The stuff that I have the most fun drawing, or it's just whether it's fun or not, it's the kind of thing you normally don't get to do in Marvel and DC books. And he loaded up a whole story with those things, so it was a lot of fun to do. But again, they let me do, like I've been saying all along, they let me do pencils, inks, hand lettering, and color. So and we're very patient. The last one especially took a long time for me to finish. But it was nice to, yeah, Cowboy on a Cow. Yeah, I don't know. Cows are just fun to draw. And the combination of Hellboy and a cow is even more absurd. So,
Well, let's see. Yeah, well, let's. Where was it? Someone wanted to know about. Do you have a bucket list, creator list, maybe that you'd like to work with? Before you hang up your hat, if you ever did. I mean, is there a creator you haven't worked with that you'd love to just get that one opportunity?
Because I am so old school, because my most fond the things I enjoy most about comics are the old comics, and I'm like a lot of my peers, I don't pay enough attention to the new stuff, so I'm kind of out of the loop there. Um, but yeah, in the past I actually made a list, and I don't even know if I still have it, of all the people I work with. Generally, it would be inking someone else's pencils, and it's I was astonished. Everyone from Carmine, I inked a lot of Gil Kane stuff, Carmine Infantino. Only one Jack Kirby, and that didn't really count. It was for the Kirby Collector, where they just kind of pieced together some pencil scans, and I didn't. I had a lot of trouble adjusting my style to fit. Kirby's are so abstract.
Exactly.
You really have to. Yeah, it is a challenge, and that didn't turn out well. But yeah, I worked with got to ink a bunch of Neil Adams pages and some covers, and even a Bernie Wrightson one shot that and a cover here and there. John Buscema, a lot of the guys that Russ Heath got to work over some Russ Heath pencils. Although I would love to have been the other way around to to have Russ ink my pencils and
Hmm.
see what he would have done with those. So yeah, there are probably a few names I could toss out of contemporary people, but um, I I mainly just want to find a way to enjoy comics a little more. I did a few little they weren't short stories; they were more chapters in another story over the last few years, where someone else would ink it, someone else would color it, and it just seemed so watered down by the time it came out, and so far away from what I would have done on my own. But that's really what I'm hoping to do is do some solo projects that where I can really do everything myself.
I mean, have you ever thought of doing, creator owned type projects, or
Yeah,
handling the
through the
writing?
years,
Yeah.
here and there, but yeah, I'll be honest with you. You know, I'm reaching a certain age where I'm finally thinking a little more seriously about doing something like that and working out the details so it's possible to do something like that. So we'll see if that comes together.
That's exciting. Kazra threw a name out, artist wise, Gene Colan. You ever do any inking over Gene's
I
pencils?
inked one cover that I considered it a challenge because I'd heard from every other inker that he's tough to ink, and I inked. Was it Night Force? Was that the DC
Yeah.
title that he did? Night Force.
Hmm.
I inked one, not the original run, but um, a later series where Gene wasn't doing the interiors, just did some covers, and they let me ink one cover of his, and I had a ball. It was beautiful. It's a lot of interpretation because again, he's not spelling it all out for you, and it's gray values which you have to interpret into black lines. But I had so much fun doing that, and it was so well drawn. I've always been fascinated by his lighting effects and the way he draws people and things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah,
I've heard the
I
same.
certainly
I would
wish I
think
could have
Gene.
done more.
Yeah, Gene's got to be a guy who was challenging to approach. But you think of people like Tom Palmer, who inked him a lot. I mean, if you got it, you got it, right? I mean, uh, so even
Yeah,
though some people might have thought it might
Klaus
have been
looked
too
great with
work,
him.
true, exactly.
Yeah,
So yeah, you can't be intimidated by it. I mean, you can still. I mean, it's funny because Gene was an acquired taste for me growing up reading comics. I mean, I love his art now. I've got a few Doctor Strange pages, Tom Palmer inks on them. I mean, I love his work, but yeah, I mean, it was just an interesting style. Like you mentioned Kirby, even though you did a ink over maybe a blue line cobbled together something or other for the Comics Journal, it's hard to kind of get in somebody's mindset, right? I mean, as a trying to get in that penciler's kind of, it would seem you have to do a lot of work, prelim stuff to just kind of get yourself into that mindset before you would like
mm-hmm.
leap and start working on the page.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just flashing back to a moment where when I first got into comics, Terry Austin, even though I didn't meet him in person, over the phone and through letters, he was sort of mentoring me and got me my first job in comics. So we were on the phone quite a bit in the early 80s. He was working on inking an issue of Daredevil over Frank Miller's pencils. And I'm bringing this up because it's happened to me so many times. It was really a stylistic struggle because he couldn't quite, you know, his style is Terry's inking style isn't like Klaus's, so he was really struggling to get it. And finally, on the last page, he felt like he got it. It's like, okay, good. Now I can do this with the job's over, and that's happened with me so many times. It takes about 20 pages sometimes to work out how to ink some of these guys,
Mhm.
and then it's over. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would put Frank and Gene Colan kind of in the same boat, right? I mean, there's and Mignola as well. If you look at his work today, I mean, they were two people who had to be challenging, and I could see Terry. I mean, he has such a fine detail, and then trying to go in and look at the pencils that he would have gotten from Frank would have been daunting in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to work with Terry on that your first Doctor Strange book, right? I mean, he did the inks on that, I believe.
I think the
57.
first Yeah, I'm bad at remembering issue numbers, but yes, that's the irony of finally getting your first chance, because I was working a day job at a printer doing paste up and design and stuff like that. And Terry wrote me a letter and said, he'd seen some of my work in the Comics Journal or Amazing Heroes, these little spot illustrations, where they,
Hmm.
used to publish fan art. And he liked what he had seen. He said, if you're interested in getting some work in comics, let me know, and I'll see if I can take in some samples of your work and see if we can get you. And sure enough, he did it. Went into Al Milgrom at Marvel, showed him my work. Al Milgrom calls me up, offers me a fill-in issue of Doctor Strange out of the blue. I'd never drawn essentially any comics more than just a sample page here or there. Never fully done anything. No short stories, no nothing. And the irony is it's Doctor Strange, who's like my favorite Marvel guy. The guy that I end up sketching at conventions more than any other. And he's, well, the banner behind me. Um, that never happens. Where you finally get your big break in big time comics. Oh, and here, do you want to draw an issue, just a fill-in issue of your very favorite Marvel title? So, and yeah, it was great having Terry looking out for me, because I didn't know how to pencil for
Sorry to pull it up in mid-sentence, but yeah,
someone
this is
else.
the only page of
And
Doctor Strange 57 on our site with your pencils and Terry's inks.
oh,
It's gorgeous.
oh yeah,
But yeah, I mean
yeah.
that's got to be a crazy feeling, though. To jump in and on your first book and have it be one of your favorite characters, and to have another
Yeah,
artist really kind of help you segue that that to happen, and then they're the ones who inks you on the book as well.
right. And I think he did the first, because then from there I went to Moon Knight and did a few issues, and I think he inked the first issue there as well. The thing about that issue of Doctor Strange, though, that haunts me is I had no idea what I was doing. It to draw a comic story when you're a brand new artist and you've never drawn a comic story before. The first problem you have is it's not drawing the hero striking a pose; it's everything in between that. And I'd never done those things. They're in, I think, the first page or two. Doctor Strange in plain clothes is walking down the street having a casual conversation with his girlfriend. And it sounds so easy now. It completely threw me, because
Mhm.
you want to draw them walking, not running, not doing anything super heroic or posing, but just that kind of naturalistic, low key movement. And I really struggled with that and virtually everything else there. Again, though, the very last page, I kind of felt like, oh wait, now I kind of get it. If I do this and this, and it was starting to come together. But then that was the last page, so
Of
it
course,
was a
because you're
challenge.
doing
Yeah,
the fill in, and then you had to move on. But uh,
yeah.
I mean, did Terry talk to you at all after he got your pencils and comment in any way that said maybe you do this or that, or I'm going to change this to that? Like you were talking about how sometimes you're looking at it as the artist. I mean, did he give you any kind of advice or insight after that first book?
He was terrific, because he and Al Milgrom, because they were both very, very patient. I was such a nervous novice and had so many questions. I probably wore both of them out. But um, I remember saying something to Terry about, I see some of these guys, just instead of filling in the blacks with their pencil, they just put an X there. He said, well, you probably don't want to do that, because yeah, that's a nice shorthand, but then it essentially becomes layouts, and this is your first job. You want to impress them more than that will. So he encouraged me to put more graphite down, which he's just looking out for me. I'm looking at this page though, and remembering that he was making little changes to make Doctor Strange more on model. He gave him more of the Fu Manchu mustache, and probably some other little, yeah, even the broad trim on his capes. That came more from Terry. That's not generally the way I would do it. But the collar is curved the way I always like doing it. It's different from the Ditko version. It curves in instead of out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked when as a teenager in high school reading the Steve Englehart, Frank Bruner, Doctor Strange. Always loved the way they did that. That was sort of my inspiration more than what Steve Ditko had done years earlier. So yeah, he definitely made his contributions here and there, but for me, his best contribution was just basically holding my hand through this thing where I was fretting about everything I didn't know and was so nervous about. He was terrific.
That's great. I mean, I've never met Terry, but I've always just heard great things about him. Seems like
he's a sweet guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't do a lot of shows, I don't think. Yeah.
The thing is, even as a kid, I mean, I love the art. I went to art school too, and so, but I was reading comics. I just love the art in it, and I always remember that if I saw Terry Austin was inking the book, I almost always bought it. It didn't matter if I was reading that series or not. I just felt like I knew I was going to love the artwork in it. It didn't matter if it's like the Incredible Hulk or he was inking, a Doctor Strange or anything. It's just like, it was really the first time I even recognized that an inker had some importance to me, because back in the late 70s, early 80s, I'm thinking of Byrne and George Perez and those kind of pencilers as being, I'd buy anything that they drew. But there was a point in time, like after Uncanny and maybe when Byrne and Austin didn't work so much, where if Austin was inking it, I loved it. His inks on Leonardi, on several books. I think,
Marshall Rogers. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He made everybody look really great. So, I love his work, and I do own some pages that he's inked too. So that's it's nice to have that in your collection. We're at the hour mark, but I figure I'll end before we start going into the art sale and everything. There was one question I just thought was interesting because I know I've never asked an artist this before, but where was that? It was Chris Lutz. He asked, Kevin, do you do anything to stretch your creative legs outside of comics, like life drawing, painting, sculpture, or anything of that sort?
Not nearly enough. I would, if I was talking to a young artist, I would recommend they do all of those things. But I've barely done any of those. Only a little bit of painting, and I wished I'd taken some classes so that I would know how to do a proper painting. Because every time I try to paint something, it's basically failing, and then trying to salvage what I can out of it. And it probably sounds more negative than it should, but that's how paintings go for me. So I generally try to avoid doing paintings. Same with sculpture. I always loved how a guy like Richard Corbin, if he's doing a series, he would sculpt the main character in clay and have a 3-dimensional. Bernie did that a little bit, I think, on the Frankenstein illustrations he did as well. And I love that, but I've rarely done any of it myself. I think that is the right way to go, especially if you're working with tricky lighting, to have something physical you can hold in your hand. And when I draw, I don't dig out photo reference. When I draw cars, I almost always try to find. I've got a few little models. That's so much better than looking at a photo, because you can turn it from, like, oh, it'd look better with this lighting here or from this angle there. Same with life drawing. I feel like with comics, where the figures are so important, that life, a real background in life drawing, as opposed to copying another artist's superhero drawings, is really important. I've done a little bit, but not nearly as much as I should. So yeah, I'm ashamed to admit I hardly ever do any of those things, but I know I need to.
Well, I mean, obviously 40 years in, you don't have to, but I just thought that was curious, because I've never asked anybody, because you'd have to think some artists, do different things. Like I know, David Peterson from, does Mouse Guard. He actually builds the sets for a lot of his, interior pieces, so he can light them and kind of understand how shadows are going to fall across the inside of a mouse's church or whatnot. And I, and I always think those things are kind of interesting and fun. I mean, or Paulo Rivera, he would pose himself, in different daredevil poses and
Mm-hmm.
photograph them just so he could understand how the lighting would be with a particular thing. And I think that's, I don't know, that it's nice to see those things and to get an inside view into an artist's process on how they approach things. So you just mentioned you have a model cars, essentially you'll pull out and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
look at. That's, I mean, again, you just never know, especially in a digital world, right, where you could just type in Gran Torino and put a year in and get whatever you want visually on the your computer screen right in front of you. That
Right.
so many artists still kind of lean on models, as
Yeah.
something to kind of reference. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking at, but yeah, because Sean Gordon Murphy, we've interviewed him a couple of times, and he makes his own
Mm-hmm.
models too of the vehicles that he likes to draw. Same for the same reason, how to light it, and it does. I think it's working. It's working for everybody using it.
Well, yeah. It's smart because then they're consistent as well, and that's one of the reasons I think Corbin was making these clay sculpts of faces, so that even if you turn it and change the lighting dramatically, it's still uh, the features are still consistent. So
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, we are gonna get into the art sale now, since we're past
okay.
that first hour. But I mentioned that we were going to do an OAX announcement, Kevin, and I'm pleased to announce that Kevin Nowlan will be our guest at OAX next January, the weekend of the 26th through the 28th, and he'll be joined. I mean, if you didn't know, Kevin, Dan Jurgens is going to be there, and Jimmy and Amanda are going to be there. So some of the people that you've worked with in the past will be at that show. But I'm really thrilled because you were kind of in my top list of guests that I was hoping would want to attend a show like that. And it's just an honor. And I thought it was funny when I asked you, you're like, Bill, it's January in Florida.
Yeah.
It's
We live in Kansas. Florida is much more desirable in January than Kansas is. So yes, definitely.
Exactly. Well, it's going to be fun. I mean, as a first show, we've got a lot of question marks and things, but it was again. I'm happy because again, you're in my top 10, so I can
Cool.
check that off. I mean, I'm working my way through the list, but it's going to be fun as an art only show. We don't really have an equivalent to that in the U.S. There's vintage art shows in New Jersey and a couple on the West Coast where you get a lot of art dealers that are bringing in older pieces, but I wanted to kind of focus a lot on the creators and the art reps as well as the vintage stuff too, so to have a really well-rounded buying opportunities or sketch opportunities from creators of all ranges. I mean, I had a gentleman who's in the Philippines is going to be joining us, as well at OAX. So I just found out last night, and he's new. He doesn't have a lot of comics work yet, but I love his work, and it'll just make for a well-rounded room to have a lot of veterans of the hobby as well as new creators too. So we'll be working out those details. But I did want to let everybody know. I mentioned as well that there is actually going to be a commission opportunity. We've done a few of these already. And so this is technically going to be the first thing that we're going to offer today is we have 6 commission slots that Kevin has agreed to do. They're going to be on 11 by 14. I mean, as I think most people know, Kevin, and you can tell me if I'm lying or not, but typically when you do convention sketches or those sorts of things are on 9 by 12. Right. I mean, I think all the pieces that I've ever handled were that. So we're going to be doing these on 11 by 14, and it's not a claim in the chat. I mean, I'll show you the slide with the price and all that, you're going to be emailing me. So we're the first 6 people to email me will get a commission spot. What the particulars on this will be is that we do expect to be delivering those at OAX. They will not be ready until OAX, so that is about 7.5 months away. But I'm anticipating many of the people in the chat will be there. I know several of the names that I've watched so far today have already bought tickets to go. So just keep that in mind. If by some weird chance you can't make OAX after you've tried, we can certainly work out mailing it to you, but I won't have the art in hand until OAX. So the idea, this is something special for OAX that Kevin has agreed to do It's not something that you normally do, right, Kevin? I mean, how often do you take? I can't even remember when I've seen a specific commission opportunity with you. So
No, no. There's usually deadlines that have to be taken care of first. So I enjoy doing them, but it's rare that I have the time to do it. So.
all right. Well, that's what I thought. And so there, I'll just go ahead and show the slide. But as I said, we expect you to pick them up there. We can arrange for shipping if you can't make it, but we want you to be at OAX. It will be the art show of the year that you can't miss. If there's any one, heck, I'm going to say it's going to be the one convention style show with artists and artwork that you should not miss annually. And it hasn't even happened yet, but one show. But I just the way things are shaping up, it will be that. So here, I'll go ahead and show the slide, and we can talk about it a little bit. It's a single character commission with minimal backgrounds, but I think these two pieces are nice examples of what you can probably expect. The price on these will be $1,000. I mean, if I did have to ship, we would work that out with the buyer. Again, they will not be in hand until OAX, which is the weekend of January 26th through the 28th. If you're not familiar with what OA Expo is, I guess I should have put the URL on here, but it is oa-expo.com, so you can learn a bit more about the show. We've got 20,000 square feet of space. We're anticipating more than 20 art sellers there. We're definitely expecting to have more than 60 artists in attendance as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a reception on Friday evening, and then the show will be both Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 5. And we're right in downtown Orlando, right across the street from Universal Studios. So it's a 15-minute walk, and you're in City Walk. So if you'd like, and we encourage people to plan a vacation around it. I mean, it's January in Orlando, and you're right across from Universal. You're 15 minutes from Disney. What more could you ask for as far as a vacation opportunity in the middle of winter? So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. And so again, it's lot 0, but what we want you to do is email me the character that you're interested in, and commitment there. We will need payment, as part of this. It's not something that we can delay to the OAX show. We would want that taken care of in the same time frame with the artworks that we're going to be offering today, which is payment within 48 hours. And but you can, it's worth it. I mean, if you've followed Kevin's work on CAF, pieces like these are just phenomenal. I mean, I've unfortunately never owned one myself, Kevin. So it's a void in my CAF gallery that I'm going to have to fill at some point. So I might be in line at your table at OA.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so there it is. I mean, if there again 6 spots, get the emails over to me, and we'll take care of things from there. I'll be in touch after the show, and anybody who watches this afterwards, if we don't sell out during the show, I'm happy to answer any questions after the show too. So I can, if they're filled up, I don't think we'll be taking a waiting list, but I'll let you know if you fell past the first 6. As far as the sales show today, I want to go over that since I didn't talk about it at the beginning. Claims will happen in the chat like they usually do. I want you to email me after the show, of course. And with that, my email address is bill@comicartfans.com. So, that anything that you've claimed, when you send the email, include your mailing address. It's always just helpful for me to have it on hand immediately. And then also just note the lot number. We've got 13 lots today. So lot number and your address after the show, and we'll take care of payment. Payment needs to be made within 48 hours. If you're going to be using a credit card through PayPal or similar, there is a 4% service fee if it's in the US, 5.5% if it's international. I do use Zelle and Venmo, and those are no fee. So I'm happy to take payment in either of those methods and not charge you any fee at all. And as far as shipping goes, the prices don't include shipping. I saw somebody ask for free shipping. That's a running joke here on the channel. No, there is not free shipping on these pieces. The domestic shipping is $30, international $65, and I handle all of the fulfillment here at CAF HQ. So, that's good. Everybody knows I ship in Masonite just like Kevin does. So I take great pride in making sure the artwork arrives safe and sound. Outside of that, and I actually didn't say, but I'm going to mention it, even though Kevin and I didn't talk about this. I'm happy to do time payments for up to 60 days on pieces that are priced more than $1,500. That would be the only caveat to all of this. And Kevin, just so you know, I would take care of you, but I would, and you know, it'd be with something that I would work out with the buyer. But if somebody, because there's a couple expensive pieces in here, and if you really want to add one to your collection, I'm willing to extend that. You know, if so, and because again, there's, you know, these opportunities don't come around too often. And, you know, one of the pieces here was in the artist edition, if I'm not mistaken. And that's right. Pretty special. You can say it was published twice. So,
right.
So there you have that. And I've certainly got several emails already. So we probably already have the 6 filled, but I'm not going to look at my email till after the show. So, so we'll go ahead and get started, Kevin. Most things are ordered lowest to highest, I'd say. I kind of move around a little bit when we get into a couple of the published pieces, but that was the order that I thought would work well for today. Let's see. I actually want to get the one piece because the first piece we're showing is something that was done on a piece of bond paper, and it's a prelim, and it's got yeah, you had printed out something on the back of it, and but then did the pencils on the front of it. So I'll go ahead and I can kind of show what it's going to look like. So it's this was printed on the back, and then that's the prelim for the piece penciled on the front. And it was funny, I didn't even know that the print was on the back, because when I look at it from the front, it's, even though it's dark, you can't even see it through the bond paper. So so slick. And so let's go ahead and show this, and then we can talk a little bit about it. So this is lot 1, Batman and Captain America prelim on 8.5 by 11 bond paper, priced at $175. For something like this, Kevin, I mean, because the cap looks a lot like an image we're going to see in a little bit. Do you typically do these as a warm-up to doing, say, a commission piece or something?
Yeah, for something larger, it's always smart to start with a smaller sketch. So I'll usually start with a thumbnail. Lately, I've been just sketching on little index cards, and then I'll blow that up, print it as you saw here, and flip it and light box it. And the flipping is nice because I learned, well, maybe I learned this a long time ago and just kept forgetting, but it's kind of a standard thing for a lot of artists to flip the image at some point in the layout process to avoid skew. Because I've caught myself realizing that I should have done it too late. But anyway, it's a nice way to work out a composition. You see the mirror image, and then you notice how you're accidentally skewing things in a certain way, or you see it's the ultimate seeing the image with fresh eyes when you flip it. So this is generally the way I work, and this would be a preliminary for a larger piece. Just basically breaking down the big shapes, the essential stuff, and then usually when you got that, the rest flows fairly easily. So.
All right. Well, I mean, it definitely was claimed. I saw somebody named Art of Business put claim and then didn't put the lot number in there, and then somebody says they deleted it. So most likely that was a mistake, and that's okay, because I saw Nick Barucci jumped in and claimed lot 1 as well. So Nick, excellent. Thank you for that. And what I would say, somebody else asked, how do you vote or claim a piece? What we'd like you to do is just type claim and the lot number. Just makes it a lot easier, because if you just say claim, that doesn't really help me know that you really meant that piece. And a lot of people tend to wait till we get to, through the list. And then they might, we show lot 13 and then they say, okay, I'm going to claim lot 7, right? So please include the lot number when you type claim and the lot number. That's the easiest way to make sure it works. And I apologize for not mentioning that to those of you who are new to the show. So Nick Barucci, thank you so much. And let's see, we'll go ahead and take a look at lot number 2. This is another prelim. And it's a Doctor Strange prelim, a little bit more done. This is on 9 by 12 Bristol, and it's priced at $225 as lot 2. And something like this, Kevin, I mean, it was done on Bristol, and did you just didn't get the chance to ink it, or was this kind of a stepping stone to doing something else?
Stepping stone. This was for an 11 by 17 piece that I did, and the larger piece was I think for an auction to benefit a friend. So it's also unpublished, but yeah, this is just a sketch working towards a larger piece. But yeah, I used to I used to do everything on just bond paper, and then finally realized, it's terrible to if you have to erase, or if you want to add some ink or anything like that. Bond paper is terrible for that. So that's why I've gone to 9x12 Bristol. Just a really handy size, and that's that's what I'm doing all my convention sketches on and things like that.
Right. Well, thank you to Mike Sitchy for picking that one up. It's a beautiful piece. It really is.
Cool.
When I saw that, I was like, I mean, I'd probably want to get a Doctor Strange piece from you if I had the chance.
Cool.
Now, the next piece is interesting because this was done as a beer label. And I've got a picture of I'll have a picture of the art, and then a second slide that shows the other artists that have done these labels as well, and what they look like on the bottle. I just think it's I think it's fantastic that a brewery has a geeks for owners that love art, that love artists, and like to do creative things with their beer labels. And so I'll go ahead and show this. This is from the Stone Brewing Company. This is a Woot Stout label from 2021. It's on 9x12 Bristol. So you can see it's edge to edge here, inked. The small image to the left is how it looked on the label. I know it's a little bit dark, but I'll show it. Go ahead and show the other slide really quick while you're looking at the art too. You can see the third bottle from the right has the label on it, but then you can see they've just been really creative and employed several other artists to do this. So how did you end up getting this job, Kevin?
Jim McLaughlin set it up, and it was in part, I think, to help out the Hero Initiative as well. But yeah, I remember I did quite a few sketches, and started with some really, because the idea was you can do almost anything, but they wanted their trademark gargoyle in there, and I did a few, and then those didn't fly, and then I ended up doing a more conventional drawing with you could easily see that could be Batman instead of the gargoyle there on top of the architectural gargoyle. But yeah, that's and also it's a the label is printed in actually three colors, if you count the it's a 3-color label. So it had to keep that in mind as well. In production, they reversed out some of the background, but yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, typically we see Batman on a gargoyle, not a gargoyle on a gargoyle. So I like that, and I thought the way they colored it was kind of nice. I mean, obviously I like the illustration better, but it definitely helped pop the gargoyle a bit off of that beer label.
Well, I think the main reason is to make it nighttime, because in my version it's not clear that that's nighttime, but still the highlights on the wings you didn't lose the wing there, even when they made the sky black. It reversed out fairly well. Yeah, I think they might have had to touch up the horns a little bit, or those would have vanished almost completely. They put an edge on there, but yeah, just some nice minimal changes that didn't affect it too much.
Well, thanks to Trevor Henson for claiming this one. We do appreciate it. And I saw, there was a question from James Siegel about it coming with a 6-pack or not. No, it does not. And but Kevin, you told me they sent you a case of beer when you got
they're good sized bottles. So yeah, 6-pack would be pretty substantial. Yeah.
So yeah, no beer with this one, just the art, everybody. Yeah. But I thought that was cool. I was looking at, I'm like, if nobody buys that, I like a good beer. So maybe I'm going to start buying the art to beer labels. I mean, there isn't a lot out there, of course, but it would be a start. But Trevor, congrats. You get to start your beer label artwork collection. So, all right, we'll go ahead and take a look at lot 4 now. And this is a Captain America illustration on 9x12. It's priced at $6.50. It really is the only kind of commission style finished piece that we've got today. But I mean, and was the prelim that we saw earlier kind of part of this, or was it because it's sort of a similar pose? But
It's a similar pose, but I think they were done at different times. So no, um, I don't think there was any connection there. I actually did a few of these just more than anything. It was just like a little inking test for me. I was trying to figure out, and on each one I did a different version of that chainmail shirt, because that's what I was trying to figure out. In the old days, we would draw it like Aquaman shirt with just little scales. Here I was trying it more as a cross hatching grid. And yeah, it was just that's all it was. It was just for the fun of it, just thinking about technique and doing a little experimenting.
Well, it's claimed by Jason D'Ambrosio, not D'Ambrosia. And I appreciate Nick trying to get it as well. I saw John Beatty actually tried to claim it as well. John, cool. You might be I would tell you, because I saw John's claim come in about 30 seconds after the other ones. John, you may need to click that little live button on YouTube. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, and I'm telling everybody should hear this. In the lower left-hand corner of the screen, there's a little link that says live. And if you can click it, that means you might be a second or two behind other people in the audience. It's always a good way to kind of get yourself as close to real time with Kevin and I as possible, because we're always a few seconds in the future, but all of you out there watching us are various seconds behind us. So it does give certain people an edge to get a claim in when they're closer to real time with us as well.
Right.
Yeah. So now we are moving into, I think, pretty much everything. Yeah, everything after this is all published work. So the first piece I'm going to show, and we've got 3 pages from Doctor Strange, and I really say 4 because one of them is a DPS, and so the DPS is first. And let me go ahead and show you lot number 5 here. So it's lot 5, priced at $800. It's from Doctor Strange, issue 20, and if I'm not mistaken, this is from 2017, if I'm not, I think, right? It was you and Chris Pacello were kind of like, he did the first part of the book, you were in the middle, and then he finished it up. It was like this really crazy story of them entering a different dimension, and the artwork changed, the artist changed. I mean, it was really cool the way it was handled.
Yeah. It worked. It was a fairly natural way of dividing up the duties, because there were different parts of the story and different scenes, etc., or focused on different characters. But yeah, it's a traditional double-page spread on 2 11 by 17 Marvel boards, and obviously the weird dimensional landscape is the star of the thing there, with all those shadows and textures and all that, as she casually eats a sandwich, I think.
It looked like a giant potato bug or something.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's not. I was thinking it was like a submarine, but yeah, it's got legs. That's right.
It does.
That's right. It's a living creature that she's eating. So yeah, it's even more grotesque.
No, but I think it's beautiful. I had to look at it for a while. That's why I put the one detail scan in there too. I mean, I like looking at the grotesque, I guess, in the background there. It's fun, and I imagine that was a joy to kind of ink something like that, right? I mean, you're really getting to do something that's really, out of the ordinary and a bit macabre.
Yeah, you kind of get lost in the technique there when you get a nice sable brush to do those tapered shadows, and yeah, it's almost like you go into a trance when you ink those things. It's a lot of fun.
There you go. Well, this piece is still available, so I always recap what we don't sell. So Rights and Esque, says Rich. I didn't want to say that, but now that Rich has said it, I can say it because it's like he did it. But I was thinking the same thing, just having fun with with something like that. I think of those early little like spot illustrations that Bernie would do in the in the back, or like the newsletter or the news mailed in news sections, where you'd have like a bag of mail and then this grotesque body lying beside it or something. Just that kind of fun stuff that it's just free flowing. Yeah. It's like whatever he wanted to do. And I look at that and I kind of felt the same way. Like you were just kind of enjoying making something weird.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, somebody else mentioned Bollywood too. So, all right. So that one's still available. We'll look at that one in a little bit. This next one, and that piece didn't have Doctor Strange on it, but this next one,
Right.
he's unconscious on this next page, but he is there. So this is lot
Right.
6, same book. Issue 20 of Doctor Strange is page 14 on 11 by 17 board, and got the printed piece beside it, so you have a reference there. And Doc is out. He'd gotten shot by some kind of a magic arrow, if I'm not mistaken, and so he was unconscious when he initially got into this realm.
Mm-hmm. You can see me working hard at avoiding drawing that motorcycle too many times, because that's got to be one of my least favorite things to motorcycles, bicycles, anything like that. They're such a chore to draw. So I spend most of my time avoiding drawing it. But yeah, the first 2 panels, there's at least a little bit of a crashed motorcycle there, and yeah, Doc's full figure unconscious Doc shot in the first panel, and then the shoe, and yeah, like a leg and a half in the next to the last panel. So technically he's there, but only just barely.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny how you were kind of moving the motorcycle out of the scene. I mean, if it was a cow, you probably would have been okay with it, right? If the
Yes,
cow is
he would have
sleeping.
been in the foreground if it was a cow. Yeah, big close up.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this one is still available as well. Yeah, Rick Welch says he might have eaten too many of those potato bugs, but yes, it does have his book of spells and his wand nearby. So this next piece has Doctor Strange all over it, and it's going to be lot number 7. And let me go ahead and highlight that one. This is page 20 from issue 20, and it's priced at $1,200. Lot number 7. You got a great image of Doctor Strange on there, and yeah, I mean, I hadn't read this until I was trying to go through things. I just thought the story was just so much fun. I mean, working with the new apprentice effectively, and I even like the way they colored it. It was just very very interesting. But something like this had to be a lot of fun. I mean, Doctor Strange is like a foot tall on the page.
Yeah, and casting a spell, which I do all the time for convention sketches, but this time with a magic wand. So it is a little different in that regard. And that, yeah, Chris colored his pages, I believe, and I colored mine. So for both of
Oh,
us.
I didn't realize you did the coloring too. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm embarrassed. I missed that part.
It's okay.
But, wow, that makes it even more awesome. For something like this, when you colored it, I mean, do you do that digitally when you're kind of working out the color?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, I still do everything else old school, pen and ink on Bristol, but the coloring is Photoshop, and yeah, they sometimes they let me do it, and I'm always appreciative, because that's when I feel like I can do my best work. So.
Well, it came out fantastic, and thank you to Kareem for picking that one up. It's a beautiful page. I've got to feel like it was in my possession for the last 3 or 4 days. That's the best part of this job. I didn't know how good
Exactly.
art reps had it, that they get to hang on to the artwork and look at it for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. Let's see here. So I think that was the last Doc Strange piece we've got. So the next one is the only Batman page we've got, and this is it's a special one because, and I think I've seen like maybe one other collector have a page from this book, but let me go ahead and highlight this one. This is lot 8, priced at $1,800. This is from Detective Comics 1027, so it's the 1000th issue of Batman in Detective Comics. It's on 11 by 17. It was drawn by Dan Jurgens. It's inked by Kevin. I love the coloring on this one. I mean, I thought everything about the production on this was really, really, really well done. And as a bonus, even on this page, there's a now. Did Dan do this? I assume, because it's on the back, right behind the Batman in the upper left.
No, that's me.
It looked like you. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, as with I was going to say a lot, maybe all of the things I've done with Dan, it's technically considered finishes over layouts. So Dan's I don't have a copy of the layout handy, but Dan does his standard layouts that are very finished up to a point. But as with Superman Aliens, the first time I think we worked together, my job, as I see it, is to add some texture and shadow and finishing in the inks. So because that's a big close up, because it's unusual lighting, I worked it out on the back of the board, so that I could keep the front fairly clean. And it's always fun to see. We were talking about Garcia Lopez earlier. A lot of times you'll see that on the back of his boards where he's corrected a layout or done some figure work on the back. It's always a nice bonus when you get a piece of original art and have bonus pencils on the back. So this is one of those.
Well, it's a beautiful page, and it was claimed by Brian McKenna. So thank you, Brian, for that. I was happy to see that one. I mean, I love your work. Cool. The way you draw Batman, and again, you're inking Dan's work there, but that was slick. So thank you, Brian, for picking that up. Let me go ahead and hide that comment there. And I know it was a quick claim, but it was after we showed it. At least the way we see it from here in the studio. I saw somebody was like, "Wow, that was fast," and that happens sometimes, everybody. And that's one of the challenges we always have here with claims in the chat when you have a lot of people wishing to get the same page. It's a bit tricky, but we do see everything in the right order here in the studio. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next lot. We've got some. I think we kind of finish up with a lot of covers here. So this first one is from Vampirella Year One, issue 3. I mean, it's one of the variant covers that was put out there. So Nick Barucci's familiar with this piece. It's priced at $1,800. It's on 9x12 Bristol, not like an 11x17 as a traditional comic page, but you can see how it's printed on the left there. My scans definitely don't do it justice. I tweaked around with it, and I thought about trying to make it a little darker, but I feel like, I have the piece actually here, so I can show people. I'll take it out of the bag as well, just to make it easier for people to get a good look at it. But it's very beautifully rendered, and as far as getting some finished pencils from Kevin, there is one other piece that we're going to see that's like this. I'll actually drop the image for a second here and see if I can show it. So my scan came out a little bit lighter than it is. It's not quite as dark as it was published by Dynamite, but it is darker than my scan. Just every time I got it to get a little bit darker, it started losing the detail. So yeah, that's tricky. I realize now I probably could use a better scanner, even though this one's been great for pen and ink, but pencil is a little bit more challenging. So on this piece, and even the other one, we have another Vampirella that's all pencil. Was that obviously that's what they wanted from Dynamite? And how do you approach something like that where you're not going to be making it and you got to make it finished?
I'll tell you the story of how this came about, because it involves Jimmy Palmiotti again. Years ago, 20 years ago maybe, Jimmy was buying a lot of my artwork, and I had sold him just some little rough Vampirella sketches. I don't know what originally they were even done for, but they were just little 8.5x11 or 9x12 pencil drawings. And more recently, he approached Nick Barucci and asked if he wanted to use those for variant covers, and Nick said sure. And then Matt, the editor of the book, called me up and said, "Do you want to do a few more?" And I said sure. And so that's how these came about. That was the first one I did, I believe, of the new ones. And that's why I did it 9x12, because I was trying to keep myself from doing finished pencils. I wanted it to look more like a sketch, like the other two from years before. But that's why it looks the way it does, why it isn't inked, and why it's got gray values, and it's probably a little more finished than it needed to be. But so I think I ended up doing a total of 6, but 2 were from many years ago from Jimmy's collection. So
Jimmy's like you just said, he's helped a lot of people, I have a feeling.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
that's classic Jimmy.
A good friend.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew W. picked this one up, and it was Hiroshi came in just within seconds of Matt's, and Nick
Oh,
Brucci was trying to pick this one up as well. So thank you both for also having interest in this one, but Matthew has claimed it. So
cool.
now we'll go ahead and take a look at lot 10. Now, I'm going to, before I even show it, I want everybody to know this is Kevin's inks on blue lines. But if this were pencils, it would probably be about at least 3 times what the price that we've got on this one. It's a fantastic image, but it is on top of Joe Quesada blue lines that Kevin's printed out. And we'll go ahead and show this one and talk about a bit about it, because it is the only Quesada piece we have in here today. This is from Invaders #1. When Kevin and I were talking, it's very reminiscent of like the Nirvana cover as well, which I didn't catch until Kevin said it, but now it's like hard to kind of unsee it. But it's such a great image. And again, it's on 11x17. The price on this one is $27.50, and it covers to Invaders 1. So so I guess for one, I mean, I know that you've done a lot of work with Joe, and sometimes it's over his pencils, sometimes it's not. So in this particular job, was this one where you kind of had a limited amount of time to get the work done? Is that how that happened?
No, I think it was, well, I don't know the story about why I was inking over blue lines, but it may have been a penciled piece that was owned by someone else, so they didn't have access to it. I'm just not certain. But the funny thing was, I should have sent you just for referencing. I did 2 versions, because it's a nice thing about working over blue lines. I did 2 versions of this. The first one, I basically just inked Joe's pencils straight, no additional shadows or anything. And then I thought, it's blue lines. I might as well do what I think might look better, and I added the shadows. And I sent I sent JPEGs of both of those to Joe. I said, I did 2 of these. Take your pick. And he picked this one of the extra shadows. And I think he's right. I think I think the shadows add so much to it, make it so much more dramatic. And then Richard Easenoff's coloring really finishes it off beautifully, even though now it does look like the Nirvana album cover, but that's okay. It's almost inevitable.
Well, they're as it turns out, Nick Brucci actually has the pencils to this. He said it was something that
Oh,
Joe gifted him at some point. So
I
that's
see.
awesome.
Now we know. Yeah, excellent. Well, mystery solved then. That's why I was working over blue lines, not over the original pencils. Um,
Yep. Well, it's a fantastic image, and again, it's at $27.50 for anybody who is interested. Published as the cover to Invaders 1, kind of on its side too, right at the end of the day. So something we
yeah,
don't see too often on a cover.
yeah. Well, and now with that information from Nick, I wonder if it was even intended to be a cover originally, or if it was just a piece that he did just for a gift, not necessarily for publication. I don't know.
Yeah. No, well, you never know. But so
Yeah.
that's cool. So Nick, did you know? I'm just curious if you knew that it was a published image too after it got inked by Kevin. Just let us know in the chat. So that one's still available at $27.50. Now the next piece we've got here, lot number 11. So again, we only have 3 more pieces to look at. Lot number 11 is the cover to Green Lantern Corps issue 20, 11x17 board, priced at $27.50 as well. There's something about this image. I just, and I'm not a Green Lantern fan, but I saw this cover. I just love it. I mean, it's so dynamic. There's the way the inking is done made me think of like the 1970s. I'm looking at something that Buscema had drawn and maybe Synod had inked or something. There's just in that crackling energy in the arm. It's beautiful. I mean, and I even look at the colored image, and I don't know if you colored it, but I thought, wow, I don't really always love the colored image on something. The cover is beautiful too when it was printed. So this is just an all around fantastic piece.
Yeah, and I did color it. That was a nice thing about doing the series of covers. Is I got to. He is one of my favorite DC characters. But then coloring it, I got to put in digital Zipatone, because for me, that's the way that dark gray or black on Green Lantern's costume always looked best back in
Mm-hmm.
the in the 70s. On the covers, you would have the black dot pattern. Inside, it would be colored with process colored dots. But yeah, and I think you'd made reference to a bit of a Kirby look, which it doesn't often come up with my work. But yeah, if you look at that giant arm, you're almost getting Kirby energy dots there
Oh
with
yeah.
inking the negative space. And again, that's a lot of fun to do. It's just it's a technique that works kind of magically. I don't know if I even really understand it. It's one of those things you just sort of do by the seat of your pants and try not to apply too much logic to it, and hope that it comes together. But yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's great, and I'm sorry, I'm not a DC guy. That's my problem. I always get complaints when I say, but it's not that I love the art. I mean, like I said, this to me was one of the more striking pieces I think in the set. I just, it's fantastic, but it has not been claimed yet, so it's still available at $27.50. We've got here. Actually, I made just a little close up on it too. But yeah, like you said, you did the dots, that pattern in the black area when it was printed, and you're right. It totally makes more interesting kind of look to the way his costume is.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So that one's still out there. I got two more to show off here.
Okay.
Let's see. Next up is lot 12. This is the other Vampirella cover that we were talking about. And I'll get the original too, because my scan on the right does not do it justice. And you can see when they printed it, it's kind of, I thought the way they printed it was kind of cool, because it reminds me of like, the Warren era kind of books where they had those kind of tones to them, because a lot of times those were, ink washed pages and things. So this is the cover to Vampirella Year 1, number 4 variant as well. It's on 11x17, and this one is priced at $4,000. I'm going to get this out of the bag carefully so I can show it to you without the glare. But yeah, my scanner just did not do pencils very well. So I can actually I'll make myself go full screen here. That'll be better. So you can see drawn edge to edge, lots of bricks. There's even a skull in there. But yeah, you can see my scan was not up to par with this. But so this happened after you got the gig with the 9x12 piece, obviously.
Yeah, like I said, I did the 9x12 thinking of making it more like those old sketches of Jimmy Palmiotti's. Mm-hmm. And then for I think the last two, I thought, I know they're asking for sketch covers essentially, but I decided to do more finished pencils at a full 11x17. It just works better. They're still black and white, still always fun to work in black and white as opposed to color. And like you said, I have that same nostalgia for those old black and white Warren magazines and the black and white artwork that they had. It just works beautifully for comics. I think less is more. And this is, I should also add this, the three cats at the bottom, they're in there basically arbitrarily, but it wasn't my idea. I think this is the only one where the editor suggested something. He said, yeah, and I think he suggested one cat, and I threw in three. And there's no connection to a story, no reason other than just for the fun of it. So.
Well, it works. It's a great piece. And we said stray cat strut. Thank you, Rick. Rick keeps this in stitches along with a few other people in the chat.
Stray cat strut. That's perfect. Yeah. It's got a title now. He is strutting. He's definitely strutting across the image. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Rich, who's a skilled artist and animator in his own right, mentions that using the door as a spotlight frame is genius. It does work really well. Good. Cool. I like it. But he also said it needs more motorcycles. So I didn't have. So we have one more piece to look at. And that is, if you follow along with the preview emails we send out, this is the X-Men cover. It's the cover to issue 19 to All New X-Men. It's priced at $6,000. You got the full team on there, like the classic team, of course, with all of my favorites, but not original costumes, of course, and more modern costumes. But this one, it's phenomenal. And when I was shocked when I saw this one, Kevin, because I wasn't sure what you were going to send me. I was thinking I was just going to get a lot of sketches and maybe commission style pieces, and it was so great to get to see so many published pieces in the set when you sent them.
Cool. Yeah, there's one odd story involving this. This is one a cover that I did not color myself, but the colorist did a very good job. However, if you look in the lower left corner of the printed colored cover, there's a feather, and I've never gotten any answer from anyone as to where that feather came from. I didn't draw it. I don't think the colorist ever claimed to have added it. Maybe someone with a sense of humor in production. I have no idea, but there's a feather and it doesn't quite make sense, because the only place that could have come from in that scene is Angel, who was way, way back in the background. I can't imagine how one of his feathers would have flown all the way up to the foreground, but there it is. And maybe like the Invaders, the Submariner Namor cover, we'll get an answer here in real time. But I continue to be baffled by that.
Well, the colorist I can't even imagine. I was going to say Angel as well, right? But you're right. Angel's so far in the back that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Hey, the editor liked it. Maybe editorial asked for it.
I have no idea. Literally no idea. Yeah, it's a cool action scene with a whole pile of bad guys and the X-Men kind of fighting their way through it. I wouldn't lay any claims to being a good action artist, but with me, my goal on something like this is to make a good composition that works. And as you said, it's in the artist edition, so I guess I can sell it now that I've got a copy of the book. So we'll at least continue to have that.
That's right. Yeah, this was the cover that was also in Dune Beer and Kevin's artist edition. But it's a fantastic composition, nicely choreographed, as Rich just mentioned in the chat. So this one's still available at $6,000. Everybody, just and that is the last piece we have tonight. And I can also let everybody know I didn't really look at the request, but I counted my emails and I saw at least 8 requests come in. So we are definitely
okay.
We're going to be booked. We're only taking 6, but I'll go through the emails and let each person know what that they got in or if they didn't, and we'll talk about that afterwards. But I'll go ahead and just show the pieces that didn't sell one last time, so people watching now know which pieces didn't sell, and anybody who was watching after the fact, you can always email me, bill@comicartfans.com, and inquire if a piece is still available. They will be in my possession for the till probably the middle of the week before I have to send these back to Kevin. So if somebody sees something that they think is still out there, you can email me. I'll let you know if it's still available or not. And of course, I send out an email after the show as well, letting anybody on the mailing list know which pieces are still available. So here, let me go ahead and just show you the pieces still out there. This is lot 5, the DPS from Doctor Strange 20. This is pages 11 and 12, priced at $800. Then we have the other page from Doctor Strange 20. This was lot number 6, priced at $500. You're not going to see Kevin draw too many motorcycles, ladies and gentlemen. So you want to jump on this one. I'm just saying. Then 7, 8, and 9 did sell, and then so let's take a look at next up was the lot 10 Invaders cover with Submariner, and this is a blue line piece, penciled by Casada, then printed on blue lines and inked by Kevin. Published as the cover to Invaders #1, priced at $27.50. Then we have the Green Lantern Corps issue 20 cover, lot number 11, priced at $27.50 as well, on 11/8/17. Then the final 2, the Vampirella Year 1 cover, all pencils on 11/17, priced at $4,000. And finally, the all-new X-Men 19 cover, 11/17, priced at $6,000. So those are the remaining pieces. We've sold 7 of the 13, so we've got those 6 left. Not too shabby, Kevin. Not too shabby.
Very good.
Yeah, I had a great time, Kevin. I feel like I actually had a whole page of notes, and I really didn't hit half of them. So hopefully we can do this again. That would be a lot of fun. I'm sure that everybody else would enjoy getting a chance to talk with you again.
No, it was fun. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, I'd be happy to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Well, everybody is appreciative, and yeah, remember, everybody, you can hit the thumbs up, and that gives everybody helps push the video out to more and more people. But yeah, Kevin, this was great fun. I obviously don't like leave the studio so we can chat after we're done here. But yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much for doing this. This was great. I knew I had a daunting task to follow Scott's interview with you from the fall, but I think I held my own.
No, you did a great job, and yeah, just like with Scott, where I think with Scott, we were supposed to talk an hour, but we were having so much fun that we just kept going for an extra hour, and I felt the same way about this. It certainly didn't seem like we spent 2 hours here.
It goes by
Hey,
pretty quick
Hiroshi.
once you get into it.
Yeah.
Jeff says, do you have to sign up for the mailing list? Jeff, to get on the CAF mailing list, I mean, most members are, most of you guys are CAF members. If you're not getting like the emails that we send out marketing wise, honestly, if you log out and log back in, I actually have a page that shows you what you can sign up for CAF mailing wise. So that's the easiest way to get in the mailing list. I hate pop-ups on websites that tell you to register for a mailing. So we don't do it that way. I only send emails to people who are actual members of CAF. So if you log out, log back in, that first landing page will give you the opportunity to, pick which kind of emails you want us to send you. Because I don't like spam you with every single email that's out there. But yeah, Kevin, we will definitely do this again. And again, I have to thank you for being a guest at OAX. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. Well, actually, we met at Big Wow. That's right.
Yes, very briefly, yeah. But technically, we did meet. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to talk or anything, but we were introduced. So, yeah, we'll get to talk more.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon. We certainly appreciate your patronage and your questions and time spent in the chat today. It was definitely a lot of fun. And like Kevin said, we'll probably do one of these again, maybe in the fall or something, before we actually get to the OAX show in January. But thanks again.